In this video, I'm going to give you a high-level demo of DashboardFox and show you some of the things you can do and also how to set it up for yourself. So I'm going to log in as an administrator user. That'll allow us to see all the sections right away and walk through them quickly. You'll notice the very first thing that I see when I log in, I'm landing on the dashboard tab, and I've got my favorite dashboard displaying. This brought in real data from my connected database, and you'll see that I've got a set of filters at the top here that I can easily adjust to see the slice of data that I want to see. So this is what we think of as the end state. You've connected your data. You've built reports, you've brought them into a dashboard, you've built a set of filters, and ideally you've built a couple of different configuration states and saved them as views. So users can easily click and load in the filter set that they're interested in, and I'll show you a little bit later in the video how a regular user can create their own filters and save them as their own personal saved view. So let's start at the beginning and see how we build into creating a dashboard like this as we go through this high-level demo. And the very first thing we're going to do, and this would be the first thing that you do in your environment, is we're going to click the settings. You do require administrative access to get into settings, and the very first thing you're going to do is connect to your various data sources. So I've got some data sources already connected here. If I go to create an app, you'll see that out of the box, you're going to be able to connect to many different databases. You'll be able to bring in API endpoints, and you'll be able to bring in Excel and CSV apps. We do have some pre-packaged apps. That's what we refer to as premium apps. But for the most part, you're going to be using these three: database, Excel, and API endpoints. I've got a combination here, but let's take a look at one of my database connections so you can see what that looks like. Essentially, you would pick the type of database that you're connecting to and give it the connection string information and the password. Now, there's lots of additional settings. The way we structure DashboardFox is all the necessary things are kind of exposed up top, and then for those advanced features, we put those in accordions. So here you'll see that there's a lot of other things we can do when we connect to a data source. I'll just point out one of the important ones is allowing direct SQL. So if you did want to shortcut your building process and go straight to just putting in raw SQL on your data source, you would toggle that on and give the right permissions, and then you can go in and do that. What I'm going to do is walk you through the normal method where we connect to the database, and then the very next thing that we're going to do is build what's called an app or semantic layer on top of that data. Now, the app building process is going to be in this icon right here. Let me expand that, and you'll see we have the concept called App Builder. Now, what's nice is if you are connecting Excel or CSV, we're going to dynamically build that app for you. But if you're connecting a raw database like we just did, we're going to build that semantic layer from scratch. Before I get into too much detail about the app builder, let me show you what I mean by semantic layer in an app, and that's going to be in the composer. This is going to be the place where the people who build reports in your organization would go to build them. Now, as I mentioned, there's two methods of building. For your advanced users that want to just put in raw SQL, they could do that. I'm going to show you more of the non-technical method that's a little bit easier, drag and drop, and that's going to be using our no-code app-based building. So you'll see I've got my data connections listed here. Let's take a look at sample data as an example. And you'll see that the very first selection is a category. What type of report am I looking to build? You decide what these categories are, and I'll show you that in the app builder. But let's say they want to go in and build sales pipeline reporting. You'll see that I've got a tree structure now of all the fields that are accessible. Now, this is really straightforward. This was built through Excel, so it's got more of your Excel type labels, and it's just a long list of fields. But you'll see in the app builder, you can control this, do subfolders, give it friendly names. You really personalize it and make it your own in terms of how your users want to find data. But once you've got this structure, this app, the concept of building a report becomes pretty fast. I can bring in a field. Let's bring in deal value and rep name. You'll see I already built a report that dynamically went out and built a query and brought that data back live. Let's say I want to add a formula. I'm going to click here and say add formula. And since this is my numeric value, I'm going to go ahead and sum up my deal values. And now you'll see I just created a nice summarized report in a couple steps. And then if I did want to turn this into a visualization, I've got a visualization area where I can say, make this a column chart. Let's add my value. Lots of things I can do. You can see there's lots of accordions in here for changing colors and controlling your chart in a very detailed fashion. And then I've got a chart just from this raw data. Let's go ahead and add a sort order and just get our bars lined up. So that's the high-level concept of building a report. You pick the fields you want, you add the kind of the parameters that you want, involve formulas and criteria, and then you decide how you want to lay that report out. And the last step is you would save that. And as you're saving that, one big important thing is you're not saving the data. You're saving the query. You're saving how to go out and run that report live. So when your database updates or when you re-upload your Excel spreadsheet and you've got new data in your tables, all those reports that you've built are going to automatically be updated and refreshed based on your data. And as you save it, there's a lot of security built in. So you determine where you want to place it, what permissions those folders have, even what permissions the reports have. And again, there's lots of advanced options. So you can do all sorts of cool things like allow public view, meaning anyone with a link or accessible to the page where you embed this report can now view this data. Now, where you're saving it is in the library. But before we go that, I promise to show you a little bit more about the app building. Now that you understand the concept of an app, how do you build your own app from your connected data source? So let's go back and take a look at that app building section. So as I mentioned, with Excel, so that one that we were looking at, if I were to go to configure, you'll see those two categories we talked about. And then if I were to go into my sales pipeline, you'll see the table that it was pulling from. And if I go to configure report tree, you'll see that folder and all those field names. And I mentioned that you can, if I edit this, I can make friendly display names and things like that. Let's go to that one that we connected to the database. And you'll see the process is really simple. I'll just add a example category. I'll configure that. It'll want me to bring in some database tables. Let's bring in a database table. And what I could do is bring in multiple and join those together and build the relationships. And then let's build a quick folder to put some data in. And I'll just call this example as well. And now I'm going to add fields coming from that database table. So I'll just bring in a campaign ID field, and you'll see now I've got the ability to go in and add a friendly display name. Now, just by doing that, if I were to go back and look at my composer, I've got the very beginning of a very simple app. I've got my category, I've got that field, and I can start to pull in data. So that's the process of building the app and enabling your users to be able to do no-code building, essentially, the way you saw me do earlier. Now, what I'm going to do before I show you the dashboard and the documents again, I'm going to log out, and I'm going to go in as just a regular end user. So this would be sort of like a view-only user. We don't call them view-only because they can do so many more things. We call them agents. And as I log in, you're going to see that they see that same dashboard that we started with. They've got that loaded in as one of their favorites. And you'll notice that they do not have the composer, they don't have the app builder, they don't have the settings. So they're really scaled down to just the things that a view-only user should be able to do. They still have the ability to do all the filtering and access to save views and even save their own personal view, as we talked about. Now let's explore the library. This is where they can come in. And as you've saved those reports, the folders that they have permission to, they'll be able to come in and quickly click and run those reports, export those reports. They even have the power, if they want to change this report, maybe they want to export it as a different visualization, like a line chart. Let's bring that in as a line chart. They can do those changes at session time for the purpose of printing or exporting this chart that way. They haven't affected anyone else in the organization. They're read-only, but they have a lot of power. Now I'm going to show you in the branding section, you could hide that power. You can take that away, or you can even make that something that in a client scenario, they have to pay extra for you to enable that report. But within this library, they can find their reports really quickly. They can also go in here and self-service export. They can self-service schedule if you enable the scheduling features, and they can do a lot of those things. So there's a lot of power of organization of data right here in your library. And then, of course, the last thing, as you saw before, they've got the ability to do the dashboards. And what's nice, again, if you allow them, they can even create their own dashboards. Now, I want to log back in as the admin to show you a couple of last features that you would definitely want to set up in your environment. Now, these are more power features, row-level security and branding. If I go back to my settings, the branding is really powerful. This is where you're going to set up your company branding. Let's edit this existing one. This is where, as I mentioned, you'll be able to go in and set up all your logos. So let's imagine I've got my company logos and colors set up, but this is also where you can turn features on and off. So if you did not want them to be able to create a dashboard, for example, I can turn this toggle off and that create dashboard button would be missing. And as I do this, I have the ability to make this branding apply to all the users in my environment, or specific groups of users, or even individual users. So I have a lot of power here to do that. I'm going to go ahead and save that branding with that turned off. I'm going to activate it. The other thing that you would want to take a look at is under security, data level security. So that client right now is seeing everything in that dashboard the same way that I do. I've got a policy here where I'm going to restrict that client just to their own data, and that's something that you can do as well. Really easy to set that up. Essentially, it's based on your app and what we call data tags. So I've got a data tag set up to identify who that particular client is, and I'm going to map that against their data and restrict that data from them. Let's log out and log back in as that client. I did not set up the login page branding, but you can do that as well. Now when I log in, this particular client, a couple changes are going to happen. One, the branding has been applied, and two, you'll see that the data on this dashboard is completely changed, and I only have one rep here because I've got that data level security turned on. So that's a very high level look at some of the main features of DashboardFox. A lot more we can go into, a lot more you can dig into, but there's a ton of power here for you to explore. Let's take a look. If I go in and look, you'll see I can't create a dashboard anymore. Start a trial, explore the product, and if you do have any questions, just reach out to us at team@dashboardfox.com.